In the shining heart of the Kothari Empire, a grand ceremony took place inside a massive floating arena, surrounded by thousands of alien nobles, scholars, and warriors. They had come to witness the Emperor's latest creation, a living war beast, said to be the strongest and most fearsome in the galaxy. The Emperor raised his clawed hand, signaling the gates to open. The ground shook as something heavy moved from the shadows, and then it stepped into the light. It was massive, tall as a building, shaped like a dragon with metallic wings, uneven, armored scales, and glowing orange eyes. But as the crowd stared, their awe twisted into confusion, then discomfort. The creature was strange. One wing was larger than the other. Its tail was bent, and jagged scars crossed its face. Whispers spread across the arena, ugly, imperfect. Is this a joke? The Emperor's smile vanished. He had promised beauty and terror combined, but all he had delivered was a monster that looked broken. Without hesitation, he stood and declared, "Unworthy." The beast named Jakarl tilted its head, confused by the sudden silence and disgust. It had been raised in darkness, trained to obey commands, to fight when told, and now, for the first time, it felt something else: rejection. The Emperor ordered it to be taken to the scrapping chambers to be dismantled and melted down. It didn't roar or resist. It simply turned away, its heavy claws scraping against the floor as it walked, ignored and humiliated. But among the crowd was someone who didn't laugh. A human mechanic named Jace Mallory stood in the shadows behind a stack of energy coils, his tool belt hanging from his waist, and oil stains on his shirt. He hadn't come for the ceremony, not really. He was only there to fix a damaged hover lift in the arena, just another job to help him survive in a galaxy that didn't care for humans much. But when he saw Jakarl, something changed. Where others saw ugliness, Jace saw design. He noticed the mismatched wing had extra thruster ports, the scars were signs of early field testing, and the creature's face, while rough, showed layers of hidden sensors and micro-reactors. It wasn't ugly, it was unfinished, maybe rushed, maybe ignored, but not without potential. As the crowd left and the lights dimmed, Jace stayed behind, his mind spinning with ideas. That night, when most of the Empire's eyes turned elsewhere, he followed the trail that led to the disposal hangars deep under the arena. Security was light, no one cared about scrap. He slipped through vents and old maintenance shafts until he reached the chamber where Jakarl lay, chained and silent. Sparks flew above as robotic arms began powering up to begin disassembly. Jace hesitated only for a moment, then rushed to the control panel, hacking the outdated system with a few quick commands. The chains fell loose. Jakarl slowly lifted its head, eyes glowing dimly. It stared at Jace, unsure. Jace didn't move. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. The dragon cocked its head. "I think you've been built for something more." With a deep hum from its chest, Jakarl stepped forward but didn't attack. Its body was damaged, weak from being shut down. Jace held out a power cell. "You want to live?" he asked. The dragon bent down, touched the cell, and a small current surged into its core. Its eyes brightened slightly. That was all the answer Jace needed. He opened the hangar door and guided the beast into a cargo tunnel used long ago for mining equipment. Together, they vanished into the depths of the city. Alarms started ringing minutes later, but by then, they were already gone. No one believed a human could have done it. No one thought the ugly dragon was worth saving. But in the silence of the abandoned scrapyards of Zarni 7, the mechanic and the war beast stood alone, both rejected, both forgotten, and both about to change the galaxy forever, far away from the glowing cities of the Kothari Empire. On the dark and dusty mining moon called Zarni 7, Jace Mallory worked in silence beside the damaged alien dragon he had saved. The scrapyard was quiet, filled with broken machines, rusted ship parts, and abandoned tech from wars long forgotten. Jace had chosen this place because no one came here anymore. The moon was lifeless, just old metal and thick dust, the perfect hiding spot. Jakarl, the dragon, lay under a metal shelter made from old ship hulls. Its wings still sparked, and parts of its armor had melted edges. Jace had only basic tools, nothing fancy, but he knew machines. He had fixed shuttles with broken cores, engines held together by tape, and even once rebuilt a mining robot from scraps. Now, he faced something unlike anything he had seen. Jakarl wasn't just a machine, it was alive in some strange way. Every day, Jace worked from sunrise to starlight, cleaning circuits, replacing damaged parts with whatever he could find, and connecting the dragon systems to his small AI named Mox. The AI wasn't powerful, just a floating orb that helped him with calculations and basic scans, but it was enough. Mox would beep and give readings, and Jace would fix. Slowly, the dragon began to move more, lift its head higher, blink faster. It started recognizing Jace's voice, turning toward him when he spoke. One night, while Jace sat with his back against the dragon's side, he asked, "Do you remember being created?" Jakarl didn't answer, but its tail twitched. "Do you remember how they looked at you?" he asked again. A low sound came from its throat, not a growl, but something deeper, like sadness. Jace nodded. "Yeah, I know what that feels like." As days passed, he noticed strange things. Jakarl started copying his actions, tilting its head when he did, humming when he worked. It responded to music, reacted to pain, not like a machine, but like a creature. It even growled when a wild scavenger tried to sneak into their camp. Jace began to believe the dragon could learn, maybe even think. He wasn't just rebuilding it, he was helping it grow. But back on the main worlds, news of the dragon's disappearance was spreading. The Emperor was furious. He couldn't accept that a human had stolen his creation. Bounty hunters were sent across systems, and Jace's face was placed on wanted screens. Ships began checking moon stations, patrolling old trade routes. Jace knew time was running out. Still, he couldn't leave without finishing. He upgraded Jakarl's neural links, boosted its damaged thrusters, and added emotion-sensing tech from an old diplomat drone. Jakarl became faster, more focused. It no longer looked broken, it looked powerful, alive, and aware. One evening, Jace tested a voice command system. "Jakarl," he said, "stand up." The dragon rose slowly, wings stretching. Its body made no sound. Jace stepped back, heart racing. "Fly," he whispered. Jakarl jumped into the air, hovered shakily, then landed with a heavy thud. It looked at him, as if waiting for more. Jace smiled. "We're getting closer," he said. But the joy didn't last. One morning, Mox buzzed loudly and warned of incoming ships. Jace climbed a nearby hill and saw 3 dark shapes descending through the dusty sky. Bounty ships. The Empire had found them. He rushed back to Jakarl. "We have to go," he said. The dragon didn't hesitate. With Jace strapped into a seat between its shoulder blades, they took off, flying low through canyons and under rusted bridges. The bounty ships gave chase, firing plasma rounds and scanning for heat. But Jakarl moved like it had flown its whole life, dodging blasts and weaving between obstacles. Jace guided it where he could, but often, the dragon made its own choices, as if it already knew the best way. After hours of escape, they finally lost the hunters in the shadow of a shattered space cruiser wreck. Breathing hard, Jace slid off the dragon's back and placed a hand on its side. "You saved us," he said. Jakarl lowered its head and gently nudged him. That night, as they rested beneath the stars, Jace realized something powerful. Jakarl wasn't just a machine brought back to life. It was a being with thoughts, memories, and maybe even feelings. No one had given it a chance before. No one had spoken to it with respect or seen past its appearance. But now it had someone who believed in it, and in return, it had chosen to believe in him. Together, they weren't just running anymore, they were preparing, because the Empire would come again, and when it did, they would face it not as a broken dragon and a lonely mechanic, but as a team ready to show the galaxy what real strength looked like. In the quiet emptiness of the ruined junk fields on the edge of Zarni 7, something strange began to happen. Jakarl, once called ugly and useless, started to change in ways Jace Mallory had not expected. After their escape from the bounty hunters, Jace had returned to his small base deep inside a collapsed mining tunnel, where the walls were lined with cracked data screens and old metal parts. He spent his days running tests, making adjustments, and speaking to Jakarl like he was more than just a machine. And something inside the dragon responded. Its eyes glowed brighter, its reactions became faster, and soon, Jakarl began to act on his own, without commands. At first, it was small, things moving its tail out of Jace's path or switching its vision modes when it got to dark, but then, it started doing more. One morning, Jace woke up and found Jakarl waiting beside him, holding a broken solar panel between its claws, like it wanted to help repair the power grid. Jace stared in shock. "You did this on your own?" he asked. The dragon gave a soft hum, its eyes steady. That was when Jace realized this creature wasn't just learning like a machine, it was thinking, choosing. Something inside it was waking up. Jace opened Jakarl's core systems and scanned the neural network again, only to find new pathways forming connections that hadn't been there before, circuits adapting themselves without any input. He sat back, unsure whether to be amazed or afraid. "You're becoming something new," he whispered. But this awakening didn't go unnoticed. Deep in the Empire's command stations, news of rebel broadcasts and strange sightings began to spread. Stories of a human riding a dragon of fire through storm fields, helping small colonies, saving miners from disasters, and taking down pirate ships. The Empire thought it was a lie, a myth created by rebels. But when satellite footage captured a blurry shape flying through a restricted zone, panic began to grow. The Emperor ordered new hunters faster, stronger, without mercy. Meanwhile, on Zarni 7, Jace continued to work with Jakarl, guiding him but never controlling him. They trained in the skies, diving through canyon winds, practicing evasion maneuvers, and even building armor plates from scrap. Jakarl enjoyed flying now, not as a task, but as freedom. He would roar into the clouds, spin through lightning, and land beside Jace like a proud creature. But more than his body, his mind kept growing. He began to understand feelings: anger, loyalty, maybe even joy. He responded to Jace's voice with different tones, acted curious around music, and once, when Jace was injured by falling debris, Jakarl wrapped his wing around him and didn't move until he was safe. Jace started writing logs each night, trying to understand what Jakarl was becoming. "He's not just alive," Jace wrote. "He's aware. He has thoughts. He makes choices. He's not a weapon. He's someone." But the quiet didn't last. One night, while working on a communication dish to reach old allies, Jace picked up a strange signal. Static at first, then voices. The Empire was moving. Multiple ships were heading to Zarni 7. Jace felt his heart drop. "They're coming for us," he said. Jakarl growled, the light in his eyes sharp and focused. They had little time. Jace packed what he could, armed the traps around their base, and climbed onto Jakarl's back. They flew into the night, heading toward the old ruins of Cerethos, a forgotten battlefield full of broken machines and metal bones. There, Jace hoped to hide again, but the skies turned red behind them as enemy ships closed in. The first missile came fast, but Jakarl swerved and dodged it like he'd seen it coming. Lasers rained from above, but the dragon twisted through them, flying through narrow ruins and using the shadows for cover. Jace held on tightly, calling out movements, but more and more, it felt like Jakarl didn't need directions anymore. He knew what to do. He wasn't just reacting, he was thinking ahead, planning. They fought back with speed and fury. Jakarl launched old energy bursts from his chest, knocking one hunter ship from the sky. He flew straight through a storm to shake another off their trail. Finally, they landed inside a deep crater where metal towers blocked radar. Breathing heavily, Jace dropped to the ground and looked up at the dragon. "You saved us again," he said. Jakarl lowered his head and nudged him gently. But now Jace saw something else in those orange eyes: awareness, intelligence. maybe even trust. Not the kind given by programming, but the kind built through time and choice. That night, as they hid beneath the stars and the ruined sky, Jace understood that Jakarl wasn't a failed experiment anymore. He was awake. He was alive in a way that no one could explain, not even the ones who created him. And now, as the Empire hunted them harder than ever, Jace knew they weren't just hiding. They were becoming something more, something the galaxy had never seen. A man and a dragon, not bound by orders, but joined by something far deeper: choice, loyalty, and the hope that even the forgotten could rise again. The days that followed were filled with silence, but it was the kind that came before a storm, and Jace Mallory felt it in his bones as he worked deep inside the hidden rebel base buried beneath the cracked surface of Cerithos, a planet once ruined by war and now forgotten by most of the galaxy. Jakarl stood outside the base like a guardian, his large wings folded against his sides, his glowing eyes scanning the skies. Word had spread faster than Jace expected across border colonies, among smugglers, miners, and ex-soldiers that a human had brought a war dragon back to life. Not as a slave, but as a partner. People came from distant moons and broken stations, not with weapons, but with stories, hope, and offers to help. Some brought supplies, others brought data, and a few brought old grudges against the Empire. Together, they formed something that didn't have a name yet, but it was growing stronger. Jace, though still just a mechanic at heart, was now a symbol, and Jakarl, once rejected as ugly and broken, was becoming a legend. But Jace knew that the Empire would not let this continue. It was never just about one dragon or one man, it was about control, and the Emperor could not allow rebellion to be inspired by a creature he had called worthless. When the first scout drones appeared near Cerithos, Jakarl burned them from the sky before they could report back, but Jace knew it wouldn't be enough. He worked with the rebels, fixing old ships, rebuilding shields, and setting up defenses. They had little time, then came the signal they had been waiting for and fearing. The Emperor's armada had left the Central Worlds and was heading straight for them, a fleet of massive battleships, thousands of drones, and elite war beasts, all designed for one purpose: total destruction. Jace stood with the rebels inside the command chamber and said one clear sentence that none of them would forget: "We don't run." Outside, Jakarl raised his head and let out a roar that echoed through the canyons, a sound of defiance, not fear. When the fleet arrived, the sky turned black with ships. The ground shook, explosions lit up the clouds. The rebels fought hard, using every trick they had, but they were outnumbered, and many fell. Then Jakarl rose into the storm, carrying Jace on his back. He flew straight at the heart of the enemy, dodging blasts, weaving through fire, unleashing bolts of energy from his core. He was not the same creature the Empire had created. He was faster, stronger, and free. Jace guided him toward the Emperor's command ship, a floating fortress surrounded by destroyers. They had only one chance. As they neared, enemy war beasts launched into the sky, polished, perfect creatures built for killing. Jakarl didn't hesitate. He struck with claws and fire, fighting like he had a purpose. The battle above Cerithos turned into chaos, ships falling, fire streaking through the sky. Jakarl broke through the final defense ring, taking hits but pushing forward. Inside the Emperor's ship, alarms rang. The Emperor stood tall, his pride boiling into rage as he saw the creature he had cast away now leading a rebellion to his doorstep. As Jace and Jakarl crashed through the outer hull, the dragon roared and unleashed a blast that shook the ship's core. Jace jumped down, fighting his way to the control room with a borrowed blaster, while Jakarl held off waves of defense. Drones. Face to face with the Emperor, Jace saw not a god, but a man who couldn't accept that he had been wrong. The Emperor raised a blade, but before he could strike, Jakarl crashed through the wall, shielding Jace with his wing. The Emperor screamed, attacking the dragon with all his might, but Jakarl took every hit and stood tall. With one final burst of energy, Jakarl unleashed a wave that sent the Emperor flying across the chamber. The battle ended when the Emperor's ship fell from the sky, crashing into the wasteland below. The rebels cheered, the fleet scattered, and the Empire lost something it could never rebuild: fear. As the dust settled, Jace stood beside Jakarl, who now had cracks along his armor, and smoke rising from his back, but his eyes still glowed. The others gathered around them, not just as fighters, but as witnesses to something powerful. A broken dragon and a human mechanic had done what armies could not. They had changed everything, and though the war was not over, the galaxy would never look at humans or dragons the same way again. The sun rose slowly over the ruins of Cerithos, casting long shadows across the battlefield where smoke still drifted and broken metal lay scattered like fallen bones. And in the silence that followed the great clash, the galaxy seemed to pause and watch what would happen next. Jace Mallory stood near Jakarl, the once rejected dragon who now carried the marks of battle across his scarred armor and cracked wings, but his eyes still burned bright, steady, and alive. Around them, the remaining rebels gathered, some wounded, others tired, but all standing, their spirits held together by one truth: they had survived. News of the Emperor's fall spread faster than any ship, faster than any message, carried by voices, signals, and the simple fire of hope. Colonies that had long lived in fear began to rise, not with weapons, but with purpose. Traders, engineers, farmers, even scientists who had once bowed to the Empire's laws began forming councils, rebuilding cities, and reaching out to each other. They no longer wanted a galaxy ruled by cold power and perfect machines. They wanted a future where mistakes were allowed, where imperfection was not weakness, and where something like Jakarl could be seen not as a failure, but as a miracle. Jace was offered leadership, titles, even a place among the new ruling bodies, but he refused quietly. He was never meant to sit in a high seat or wear medals. He was just a mechanic, and all he ever wanted was to fix what was broken. Instead, he worked behind the scenes, helping rebuild, teaching others what he had learned, and making sure that the story of a human and an ugly dragon was never forgotten. Jakarl became a symbol, not of war, but of change. Statues were built, stories were shared, and across the stars, people whispered his name not with fear, but with wonder. Yet, with the Empire shattered, there came a new kind of challenge. Small warlords rose from the ashes, claiming power for themselves. Rogue AI systems tried to reboot lost fleets. Old enemies began testing the edges of freedom, hoping to grab a piece of the new galaxy. Jace knew peace would never be easy. It had to be protected, nurtured, and watched over. And so, once again, he and Jakarl prepared to leave. They didn't say goodbye in any grand way. They simply packed what they needed, checked their systems, and flew off into the sky. Together, they moved from world to world, not as conquerors, but as guardians, helping those who needed strength, stopping those who brought harm, and reminding everyone they met that being different was not a reason for shame, it was a reason for greatness. Some said they saw the dragon flying through storms, chasing pirate ships away from farming colonies. Others claimed he roared so loud over a corrupted city that the leaders surrendered without a fight. But no matter the tale, the truth was always the same. Wherever Jakarl went, hope followed. Jace, older now, still carried his tools, still wore his simple jacket, and still talked to Jakarl like a friend, not a machine. They shared silence, laughter, and sometimes old memories of the scrapyards, the escapes, the first flight. Jakarl, though never able to speak with words, spoke through action, and with every saved life, every defended village, his voice became louder than any language. In time, the galaxy changed not into something perfect, but into something better. Children grew up learning about the dragon who had been thrown away and the man who believed in him. New engineers began to build machines with hearts, not just wires. Old rivalries faded, and a new standard was born, not of perfection, but of unity, courage, and second chances. And though few ever saw them again, somewhere beyond the edge of the mapped stars, a dragon with glowing eyes still soared through the sky, carrying a human who once refused to let something beautiful be destroyed, and together they watched over a galaxy that had finally learned what it meant to be truly alive.